Hi everyone, my name is Shiyao Kuang. I'm currently doing PhD in TU Dublin. My presentation today is on a review of BIM policy framework to help deliver Irish industry objectives. Today's presentation will follow firstly a BIM policy background and then go through Irish BIM policy and Irish BIM policy objectives. After that, I'll review international BIM policy and compare the policy with country's adoption rate, eventually making a recommendation for Irish industry. The desire of AEC sector toward digitalization start from industry problems, such as housing need, such as clash detection, the efficiency of construction building, and more importantly, when the McKinsey report compare the digitalization for all industry, construction industry shows is one of the least digitized industry among them all. World Economic Forum report recommend building information modeling as the fundamental platform to drive digitalization for construction industry. Because of that, many countries has taken initiative to promote BIM use to drive digitalization from the early stage. One of the global BIM report has experienced each country of BIM in their public sector. Most of them has the mandate. Some of them has recommended to use BIM in their policy. And EU BIM Task Group set up a strategic framework for all EU countries to follow, as all of them need to have a communication in the industry, a training program. The government need to have a leadership, and they need to have regulation for the industry to follow. The latest EU Digital BIM Logbook has further stepped up as a handbook mentioned the target they want to achieve through digitalization is they want to achieve a more sustainable environment. And back to Ireland. The importance of Irish action plan for a job recommended for BIM use in the sector was the first driver for BIM use in Irish sector as the desire to increase the competitiveness of Irish industry. Furthermore, the digital roadmap with the goal of increasing expert, decrease cost and time waste in AEC sector, planned 4 pillars as the pathway toward digitalization. The 4 pillars are standard, procurement, training and education, and leadership. After the launch of 2 ISO 19650 standard, building a 2020 report find out even though it shows a positive increase of BIM use in the Irish industry, but it still needs to improve productivity. Good news is from 2024, all the public projects above 100 million euro will require BIM as a mandatory requirement. Meanwhile, my research is to support the transaction in between, how the BIM use, BIM adoption, how to promote it, and how the BIM adoption would address the industry needs further. Hence, there was a desktop study launched first by what are the driver and what are the BIM framework exist. The research was going through 2 steps. Firstly, a systematic literature review and a desktop study to review each country's story. The systematic literature review searched the term BIM policy through 4 common databases: Scopus, Science Direct, Google Scholar, Web of Science. Through the systematic literature review, exclusion, inclusion criteria, as are they in English, and set up the timeline from when the BIM policy appeared. From 2013, it became popular to talk about. And are they most relevant to the topic? As are they talking about the driver? Are they talking about the BIM framework? Eventually, 34 publications was found most relevant to BIM driver and enabler. After review the 34 papers, there are addressed two sets of policy driver and policy enablers are found. Policy drivers are usually from two categories. One, the internal driver, as the driver inside the country, such as environment driver, social driver, economic driver, or external driver as the pressure from other country or the pressure gained from the technology advance. Internal driver could come from industry feel like they want to use BIM, or the industry is ready to use BIM. And it can also come from a more common driver, which the target that the policy is trying to achieve, such as they wanted to achieve sustainability to the industry, or they want to achieve a better productivity, or even a smaller concept like they want to reduce cost for the construction, they want to reduce time waste, they want to increase the export. And policy enabler is usually follow three roles, as the government would play a motivator to the industry, provide successful case study, or BIM incentive, provide some funding to the industry. Or the government can play as a collaborator with BIM procurement and BIM collaborations. And most common way of most of the government playing is to be the enabler. Address case study to learn experience. Use the BIM adoption evaluation system to evaluate the current adoption level. Provide education and certification to the industry. Provide a BIM roadmap and action plan. BIM mandate, BIM regulation, special interest group, BIM library for information, and research and development. The 34 papers are equally covered most of the high BIM adoption countries. So it came from the next step needs of review the country's policy. Aims are collect the country from systematic literature review and search for when they start a government mandate. As we can see, Finland, Denmark, they are the early adopter. And US, the US General Service Administration mandatory BIM use for all of their clients from 2007 as well. UAE actually started to mandate the BIM use from 2014, and Sweden, Singapore, they start to mandate from a certain scale of the BIM project from 2015. Korea, Australia, UK, they launched the mandatory for BIM after, and Austria, Hong Kong surprising actually launched the mandate quite late, Germany, France, and Poland. While searching for the government mandate, it was interesting to find out, is there any relation between the mandated year with their BIM adoption level? So I collect different reports with the BIM adoption level for different country over here, which you can see the adoption level doesn't appear by the same year in this slice over here. Some of the country has a track over year, some of them just appeared by a earlier year's BIM adoption level, which most of the country over here has a high BIM adoption level, no matter they have an early mandate or a later mandate. Some of their BIM policy has appeared differently. Like Australia and US, they don't have a BIM mandate across the country. Only some state, like Australia, they have mandate in Queensland. US, they have mandate in Los Angeles and Wisconsin. But in Australia, they have a really well education system to support the BIM mandate locally. In US, they have a really well software company to promoting the BIM use in their industry. Another quite highlighted example over here is Scandinavia countries, which they start the idea of information management quite early in their construction sector. Finland moved on to mandate BIM for all public projects above 1 million euro by 2007, and Denmark, Sweden, Norway has all mandate BIM use for the public sector, which, because of the high industrial awareness of information management and how to transact the information, it doesn't appear much difficult to adopt the BIM in the early stage. And their open standard is another reason why they're having such a high rate, and to make them have less complicated when they're communicated, while they're communicated inside the BIM collaboration. UK is one example for BIM policy. They mandate BIM Level 2 for all state-funded projects by 2016 with their well-known policy package, the standard procurement, their research group, their local industry report, which has made the UK BIM policy one of the most successful stories among the world. Their needs for achieving BIM Level 2 has moved on to achieve digital twins by BIM and all others construction technologies. In Asia, countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea is also shows quite a high BIM adoption level. Hong Kong has constantly having the BIM incentive from their government to encourage the industry to adopt BIM, achieve reducing time waste, reducing cost waste, reducing cost for the project. They mandated for all public projects above 30 million Hong Kong currency by 2019. South Korea, they firstly have the mandate, and after that they launched the BIM Roadmap 2030 by 2018 with a permission administration system. Singapore mandate BIM quite early by 2014 for all public projects above 5,000 square feet. And they come to the country which have a lower adoption rate. Poland hasn't had a mandate yet. The mandate will launch at least by 2030. And France has currently encouraging the BIM use, which it doesn't have a mandate as well. Austria has a BIM mandate for the budget control from 2018, and by 2020 they have the mandatory for all public projects as a call for the EU handbook. But because they have no legislation, so they still remain a lower adoption rate. Which make important needs to know what is the story inside the Irish sector. I'm currently conducting a survey through all Irish public sector to find out what is the BIM policy objectives. 16 participants has been collected so far, which 92 of them think Irish public sector needs to do more in BIM. 46 of them think the current focus on BIM adoption should be achieving a better sustainability environment, a better energy use, green building, lean building. And 60 of them think it's important to bring out BIM incentives such as funding or encourage to the industry to use BIM, especially for small and middle-sized companies. 80% of participants is asking for demonstration of pilot project and case study to clarify what is the BIM benefit can actually bring in the Irish industry. Which is a good news that 21% of the participants think education is still important in the Irish industry to understand and bring out skill set to the industry stakeholders. Among the all 16 survey participants so far, 53 of them mentioned in the group they're working. There has a small group of people internally who is using BIM. And within the mandate of BIM, recent mandate on other project with a value more than 100 million euro will be mandated BIM by 2024. All of them has aware of such mandate, and 85 has approved the mandate. 15 think the mandate, even in the future, should only focus on a larger project. And there was another question in the survey is about, do they think the Irish government has done a lot with promoting the BIM contract for public sector? 46 disagree with it. 46 agree the Irish government has done some work, but they mention it's not enough. Only 4% of them is completely agree. So far, the Irish government has done enough work on promoting the BIM contract. Thank you for listening to my presentation today. I would like to invite you who has experience in public sector work, please kindly contribute to our research with this survey on Irish BIM policy objectives with a much weathered experience. Thank you so much. That's the end of my presentation today.